What's up, baggers? My name is Anthony Ione, back in the lab on another episode of Cornhole Science. Today we will talk shot selection when dealing with the most foundational shot in the game and the most underrated shot, the blocker. A blocker is a defensive approach that impedes your opponent's clear line to the hole. Baggers will typically use the stick side to slow down speed, leaving the bag short of the hole, blocking their opponent's clear path. A block can be centered on the board. This is best used when your opponent's throwing arm is located on the board side, also known as inside arm. Or a block can be positioned off center, located to your opponent's side of the board, called a lane side block. This is best used when your opponent's throwing arm is located to the outside of the box, also known as outside arm. 6 bags fit exactly between the hole and the front of the board. Each bag represents what we call a level. Level 1 being the first bag position here, level 2, level 3, and so on down to a level 6. Today, we'll talk all about the level 2 block. Now look to the other videos in the Cornhole Science series where we break down the other levels of blocks. All right, let's move this level 1 down to a level 2. Now, this is where the shot options really blow up. So many shot choices to choose from. Let's talk back block first. A back block is placing your bag behind your opponent's block, preventing a push for maximum points later in the round by your opponent. A back block is largely underrated in difficulty to execute since you're attempting to stop your bag on a dime. You're controlling both the distance and the left to right movement to lay a perfect block. Now, baggers will typically use the slow side of the bag to back block as it provides the brakes necessary. For example, the slow side of this BG Viking offers the material, a high friction material necessary to lay a block. You'll also get that with the BG Wizard as well. Just a word of caution, before laying that level 2 back block, know your opponent's strengths and weaknesses. For example, I would not level 2 back block a superior air mailer like a Matt Guy or a Jimmy McGuffin in this situation. If I back block them, what did I just do? I just put myself in an airmail battle with an elite guy. I also wouldn't level 2 back block a guy like Eric Davis. Similarly, I put myself in a roll battle or a his roll versus my airmail battle, setting myself up to give up points in that round. Pushing through. Pushing through or up into the level 2 block is a solid option. If I was Cheyenne Renner, who has an extremely straight line to the hole and a faster model bag like this slick side of the BG Shapeshifter or even this BG Witcher, I would push up into that block or up through it to get everything up closer to the hole. Step outs and get arounds. By rule, baggers are allowed to reposition up to 3 feet from the edge of the board. The position away from the board is called a step out. Now, the step out position opens the world to cuts and get arounds. On a step out, let's introduce the concept of inside arm and outside arm. When you're on the side of the board, when your throwing arm is board side, this is called inside arm. When your throwing arm is facing the outside boundary of the pitcher's box, this is called outside arm. Now, depending on inside arm or outside arm, different shots become available here. With an outside arm on a center block, this is a classic setup for a cut bag. Now, cutability is improved with high friction bags like this BG Viking and in some slower conditions with the BG Wizard. And on a level 2 block, you now have all this room to work with behind the blocker. So, using the stick side of the bag on release with a pinky high finish, so I'm going to actually release the bag in this position. It puts my palm and ultimately the bag in a tilted position low to the throwing hand. And this is key to pulling off a cut shot. Here we are in full step out. Bag is tilted in flight, low to the throwing hand. On impact, the BG Viking will cut or move to the non-throwing hand. In my case, as a lefty, left to right movement past the blocker finding the hole. Now here's where some of the strategy comes into play. You've just taken over point control. You're sitting 3 points in the hole while your opponent is 1 point sitting as a blocker. Now, your opponent has to make a decision here. Does he go and try and push this blocker now? Does he try and match you with an airmail or some other complex shot so he can leave your blocker here for your next bag? Touching your opponent's blocker on the way by, pushing it out of the block position gives you a line to the hole on your next bag and make it more difficult for your opponent to push or collect that bag later. This is called a bully. As a next level shot, cutting directly into the blocker, bullying it out of its block position, and your bag taking over the block position instead of going in the hole is called a box out. You're taking over hole control as the lead blocker and bullied your opponent, reducing the likelihood of your opponent putting that bag in the hole later. For my fast bag players, there just isn't enough friction between a fast bag and the board to cut bags consistently and drastically as slow or high friction bags. It's possible under the right board conditions and in perfect bag tilt, but much more difficult to pull off. What you can take advantage of is the hole friendliness fast bags like this BG Witcher have to offer. In this same outside arm setup, approach the left side of the blocker targeting the outside edge of the hole. Faster and floppier attributes of the BG Witcher will drop a corner into the hole, executing what is called hooking or grabbing the rim and working its way around into the hole. Because of the loose or floppy characteristics you generally get with faster bags, you'll find these bags melt more in and around the blocker, allowing you to slip past the blocker without collecting or pushing that bag in with you. The roll bag. On a level 2 block, the roll bag is a legit go-to option. Now, to pull off a roll bag, you're going to be releasing in the pop-a-willy or front up position where the bag is loaded low in the back. So on impact, the back of the bag hits first, slamming that front edge down, creating the back edge over front edge momentum and essentially rolling over the level 2 blocker. Now, when your roll bag is executed at the same or higher percentage success rate as your airmail or your opponent's airmail, I like the roll better, not because of the results of the makes, but instead the result of the misses. A missed airmail is typically gone and off the back, whereas a roll bag typically stays on the board, many times in the defensive block position like you see here, and sometimes on the hole to be collected or drugged later for max points in the round. Now let's move that center block to a lane side block, now in the outside arm position. Here the blocker is in your direct line to the hole, giving your opponent a clean line to the hole. Here is where a lot of baggers get into trouble. Cutting doesn't make sense. You can't step out far enough to get the angle needed to come around the side of this bag, and you're limited on the space you have to land in and around that blocker. A back block certainly doesn't make sense. If you back block, your opponent now has a clean line to the hole and your lane is all jacked up. If you decide to shoot an airmail over a lane side block, you still have to deal with this block on your next bag and the bag after next. Rolling or airmailing over this is an option, but again, you're betting on executing these complex shots at a higher rate than your opponent just having a wide open slide shot to the hole. The by-the-book shot here is setting up a side-by-side. The key here is to control your bag on board speed enough to not fly off the back, make contact with the opponent's bag to help slow the speed down, leaving you in a lane side block position side-by-side to your opponent's lane side block. In these side-by-side scenarios, ideally you're the lead block, so you're slightly ahead of your opponent's block. Better there than in. Now this is forcing your opponent to make a critical decision on their next shot, typically baiting them to push through or airmail over their blocker. And notice, contact with the blocker did bully it slightly out of the way, setting yourself up for a cleaner lane to the hole on your next bag. If you throw a faster bag or are comfortable with the fast side of your slow bag, you can attack the inside of a lane side blocker and get around finding your way to the hole. This is more complex than a side-by-side as it requires your precision contact to the blocker and risks pushing the opponent's bag into the hole or shooting yourself off the back. Now let's move to the same setup to the other side of the board, now putting the pitch setup inside arm. What changed? First, we've lost max angle to the hole because the release point will be closer to the board, equal to the width of your shoulders. Also, we're coming around the opposite side of the bag, which creates different physics when the bag contacts the blocker. Let me explain. As a lefty, my bag spins counterclockwise. Moving around the left side of the blocker, the spinning motion pushes the bag away. See the contact here with the corners pushing the bag away. Typically, this collects bags more. Move to the other side or right side of the blocker, and the counterclockwise spinning motion acts like a gear, grabbing or pulling the bag, making it easier to get around without collecting the bag into the hole. hence the name get around when coming around the right side of the blocker. Again, as a lefty and coming around the left side of a bag, we typically shoot non-contact shots like rolls and cuts. Whereas on this other side or the right side, a contact shot is okay as the rotation pulls the bag and allows the pitch bag to slip past. Now reverse all of that for a right-handed player since the bag rotates clockwise instead of counterclockwise. Let's identify the setup. Your pitching arm and the side of the blocker you're getting around are opposite. In my case, a left-handed pitcher getting around the right side of the blocker. For a righty, that would be right arm pitching, getting around the left side of the blocker. Let's note, there's a slightly different approach to get around when considering a slow friction bag versus a faster, floppier bag. With the slower speed carpet style BG, for example, when using the carpet side, I want to approach the blocker with a higher loft than usual, landing just behind the get around side of the blocker. What happens is on impact, the bag actually bounces away from the board just enough, not enough to see, making it weightless. And at that instant of contacting the bag and with the rotational direction acting like a gear, it assists the bag in the get around action. Now, if you land way too short on the get around versus right behind the bag, if you land too short, at impact, you get that bounce again. It travels a little bit, then it settles back to the board. Now you're just a slide bag. So you either push through the blocker, it kept collecting it, or you get too much friction and too much slide, and it comes up short. Now, just the opposite for a slick bag. If we land closer to the blocker, it's gone off the bat. But if we land further down the board, the floppiness and looseness of a faster bag melts on contact to the blocker, minimizing a push or collect on that blocker and maximizing the hole friendliness, working its way past it into the hole. Reverse cuts. So similar to what we described when outside arm for a cutter bag, and remember with a cutter, we are tilting low to the throwing hand. This is my tilting hand. This is what we need to do to achieve cut motion. Now, with a reverse cut, I'm going to release in the other direction. I call this a handshake release. So I'm now going to be releasing in this position. And what happens is on a cutter, again as a lefty, I'm tilted to the outside. It's going to cut to the high side of the bag. So on impact, it's going to cut to the right for a lefty. For a righty, reverse cut, I'm going to reverse that tilt. Again, it cuts to the high side. It's going to land here. And for a lefty, it's going to cut to the left. Reverse all of that for a right-handed bagger. You will not get as drastic of a reverse cut as you will with a standard cut, but you can achieve some movement toward the hole around the level 2 blocker. The airmail. For my strong airmailers, a level 2 block is a tough dilemma. Strong airmailers see this level 2 and are tempted to shoot this over the top all day. Now here's where knowing your opponent's capability and your capability may help you in the decision making. If your opponent struggles to push and you have a strong airmail, shoot over a level 2 all day. Strong airmail pros will shoot over a level 2 block. Why? Because they demonstrate 60 to 70% in-game airmail, and you're leaving your opponent a tough bag to deal with. Also, if you have last bag in the round and shoot greater than 33% airmail, shoot this airmail all day. In summary, when faced with a level 2, there's now space behind the blocker, allowing for step-out shots like cutters and get-arounds. Roll bags make more sense, leaving your opponent with a more difficult next shot. Making contact with the blocker to bully or box out becomes so important, and the strong airmail players out there are going to want to shoot this shot. The by-the-book shot on a level 2 is highly dependent on the bag type, your capability to execute different shot options, and knowing your opponent's strengths and weaknesses. That's going to do it for today's episode of Cornhole Science. For players newer to the game, looking for basics in rules, regulations, terms, and gameplay, check out the series titled Cornhole 101. For more advanced players looking for quick-to-the-point content, check out the Tips and Tricks series. All the content can be found on the Cornhole Science Facebook page, as well as the Cornhole Science YouTube channel.